Announcements. Terrible death to die. Terrible death to die. Terrible death to die. Did you ever sing that at camp?
Nope.
We sold our cow.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Let's Pod This. My name is Andy Moore. I'm one of your hosts, and I'm joined, as I am every week, by my co-host, Scott Melson. Hello, Scott.
What's up, man? How are you?
I'm well. We've been gone for a few weeks. Thanks for hanging with us. We're back now with what we are dubbing Season 2, although this is really just a continuous thing, right? Like, the world continues to turn. So thanks for being with us while we take a couple of weeks off to rest, to vacation, to plan. Scott and I spent several hours the other night planning out what we're going to do on the podcast from now through September. We are on top of our game.
We really are. It feels odd for us.
It does feel odd. For one, we're finally not in the midst of a legislative session or special session. When we started the podcast, we thought, okay, we'll do this during session, and then in the off season, we'll do all this other stuff.
Right.
And there just was continuous session for like a year and a half.
Right. We thought session was going to be like 3 weeks, and I was like, nope, we're going to go until May.
Right.
Nonstop.
Next May.
And not only are we going to go till May, but like major things are going to be happening like constantly.
Right, yeah. And so we blew past all the interim studies and everything else because we just had to keep going. So we're going to kind of give a rundown of what we're hoping to cover in just a minute. But first, I wanted to highlight 3 events that are coming up this month, this month in June. The first event, first thing you should know is that on June 1st, which is, well, tomorrow from the day we're recording this, and hopefully I can get this edited and out by then, so it may be too late. But regardless, June 1st is the deadline to register to vote if you want to vote in the primary election, which is on Tuesday, June 26th.
And you want to vote in the primary election.
Oh, yes, you do.
Because here's the thing, right? If you don't vote on June 26th, and then you come talk to me in November, be like, well, Scott, I really want to vote, but I just really don't like any one of the candidates. The first thing I'm going to say is, well, who did you vote for in the primary? Mm-hmm. And then you're going to say, oh, I didn't really vote in the primary because I didn't think it was that important. I'm not going to say here what I'm going to tell you to do, but no, you don't get to complain about the candidates that you have in November if you didn't play a role in selecting those candidates in the primary election.
Right. So the deal with the primary is that it's when we choose the person from each party, whatever party you're affiliated with or no party, you may get a vote in guiding who is on the ballot in November. And so this is the first opportunity to cast a ballot towards that. And it's really important, particularly for races where there's only one party of candidates that are running. So in Oklahoma, for example, if there are 2 or 3 or 4 Republicans running, but no Democrats, that race will be decided very likely in this primary, and that's it.
Not very likely. In fact.
Well, in fact. There could be a runoff if no one candidate gets 51%. But regardless, now it sucks because members of the other party or of no party don't get a say in that. Only registered Republicans would get a say in that example. But nonetheless, for all of our Republican listeners, you got to vote, man. And ladies, everyone's got to show up to vote. As I say all the time, people are going to be elected, right? On June 26th, people are going to be elected. They're going to progress to the next stage of our electoral process, whether or not you vote. And so if you don't vote, you don't get a say in who that person is.
Preach.
There are some great candidates, and there are some really god-awful candidates out there. And once they're in office, you can't just vote them out. You have to vote for somebody else. This is your chance.
Pastor Andy, bring in the word.
I see that hand. Okay, so register to vote immediately if you haven't already. If you've moved, you need to update your thing. I get it. Just do it. Go online, ok.gov/elections. Print off a voter registration, mail it in, whatever. Take it. As long as it's postmarked by the 1st, you'll be okay.
And I will tell you, not just for this election, but for any election, if you're registering to vote, you print out the form, you fill it out, but you just don't have a stamp. You're a millennial. You don't know where to buy stamps because you never sent mail. If that's kind of the situation in which you find yourself, you can bring your form and you can put it in my hand. You can put it in Andy's hand. Either one of us, we will mail it for you.
Yeah, or you could just take it to the state election board and turn it in.
In fact, we're old millennials, so we know where to buy stamps. But if you're one of the younger ones, we've got you covered.
Right. You can also go to a tag agency and they will mail it for you.
Yes.
That's also an option. But yeah, tweet at Scott or I, and we'll come meet you. I'll come.
Yeah, true story.
You better hurry. My schedule's pretty open tomorrow, probably more than yours is.
No, I'm free tomorrow afternoon.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I got an AC guy coming to the house at some point, but other than that, I'm pretty open.
Great. I'm free until 3. If you can cover after 3 p.m. tomorrow,
yeah,
for those last 2 hours,
deal.
We can get this done. Okay. Great. Now I've really got to edit this tonight. Otherwise, it's going to be just a waste.
It's gonna be
if you're listening on Saturday, hurry. You missed out. All right. So the other 2 events that I want to highlight, one is next Wednesday, June 6th. You will hopefully be listening to this before then for sure. June 6th at 6 p.m. 6 at 6, which is ominous. Anyway, that is our labor commissioner debate at the Tower Theater. This is for the Republican candidates for labor commissioner. And now I will address some criticism right away that, yes, this is just the Republican candidates because those are by far the most popular candidates for this race.
Yeah.
We invited the Democrat candidates to come as well, but one of them hasn't even filed a campaign committee. The other one's done very little. But hats off to those folks for running, right? Like, I'm not saying they won't win. I'm just saying
it's not likely.
We only have so much time and effort and space, and we've got to kind of put all of our eggs in one basket, and let's just call a spade a spade. It's very likely that one of these Republican candidates will win the election, and this is the more hotly contested side of things.
Yeah. And I would throw out there too, I personally, and Andy, toss your thoughts in here. I personally find intra-party debates like this way more interesting.
Really?
Yeah, because you
can compare apples to apples a little bit better.
Right. Like, and labor commissioner is, and we're going to talk about this, I think, in a minute, but like labor commissioner is a little bit, it's kind of one of the more esoteric offices, right? Like, I think if you ask if we did a man or woman on the street interview and said, what does the governor do? Or what does the president do? I think most people could answer that. If you asked kind of the average Joe or Josephine on the street, like, what does the labor commissioner do? They may not have an answer. So I kind of, but putting that aside, when you take candidates of the same party and ask them the same set of questions, I think it kind of throws their differences into a little bit more, like into a little bit sharper relief, as opposed to taking a Democrat and a Republican, particularly in a big office like governor or president. You ask what you think about healthcare, what you think about Medicare, what you think about Social Security, what you think about taxes. I think a person who's fairly who follows politics a lot can probably predict at least the contours of those answers. Mm-hmm. Whereas when you have 3, 4, 5, 6 members of the same party, it kind of forces them to define either A, how do they differ from the party ethos, or B, kind of delineate what they think the party ethos should be.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So while I absolutely hear and accept and acknowledge criticism from folks that say that this should have been a debate among all the candidates, the fact that it's a debate among just one party, to me, as just kind of a political junkie who finds this interesting, to me, that makes for a more interesting debate.
Right. And just like in national politics, presidential debates, they invite the candidates that are like highest in polling. They don't invite all the candidates because there's always a ton.
Right.
And you just gotta kind of maximize your resources.
Right.
So,
like you or I could file to run for president in 2020, right? Like we could file the papers and say, and be a president of the United States to run for president of the United States. We're not going to get invited to any of the debates.
Right. Man, that'd be cool though, just to show up.
Right.
We can't do any worse than some of the people that are up there. So we are doing the debate, and there are 3 candidates out there, and we are looking forward to hearing from each of them as we move forward in this kind of election process. So June 6th at 6 p.m. at the Tower Theater on 23rd Street and Walker-ish. It's a free event. Please come. There'll be drinks for sale.
Great venue, by the way.
It's a great venue, yes. They are one of the sponsors. We have great sponsors, great supporters, great hosts. If and we would love to pack it out. And we found out that Facebook is cracking down on how you promote posts. Mm-hmm. You have to like upload your ID and all kinds of stuff now in order to get a boosted post. So if you're listening to this and you're coming, please invite your friends and share the event on Facebook.
100%.
It's going to take 5 days for us to get the letter from Facebook with the special code so we can prove that we're Americans and not Russian bots, which is an important distinction. Which is good. That just means in the interim, we really need some help from all of you that know that we're not Russian bots.
I am no Russian, Andy.
I'm not. No.
I'm no Russian.
I was born in Texas, actually.
I have never met the president.
That's what they all say. So what I also want to say is that if you don't know what the labor commissioner does, then you should definitely come.
100%.
That's the first section of questions. So, all right. So we're going to do, that's on June 6th at 6 p.m., as we said. And then finally, if you're interested, I'm just tossing this out on a whim for my personal edification. On June 11th, which is the following Monday, so 2 weeks or so, I'm speaking out in Yukon to the Canadian County Democrats. No, you don't have to be a Democrat to come. They just invited me. We've been trying to nail down a date for a few months. And really what we're going to be talking about is how to be involved, how to be an advocate, regardless of your party affiliation. How do you get involved, and why is this important? And that's where we're at. That's what Let's Fix This is all about. That's one of my passions. And so I'm going to retool a speech that I've given before, or a presentation, to make it a little more exciting and a little more honed for this audience. Would love to see you there. Let's pack it out. I'm sure they'd be excited just to pack it out. So seating is first come, first serve. It's a free meeting from 7 o'clock to 8:30 p.m. at the Yukon Police Department. The address is 100 South Ranchwood Avenue. I used to live right by there a few years ago.
Can I just say, I love that you have speeches that you could retool.
I've got a slide deck.
That's awesome.
I think it's called How to Change the World in like 8 slides.
That's awesome.
I'm working on the whole thing, but really, it's all about regular folks getting involved, because that's what we're all about here at Let's Fix This. So, love to see you then, June 11th, at the Yukon Police Department. All right. Now, Scott, I'm going to toss it over to you to let us know what we're going to cover today in this episode.
Yeah, so we're gonna kind of, this is the kickoff episode of essentially what we're kind of, between the two of us at least, calling season 2. We don't really have seasons here, but we've been on a break. We're kind of looking ahead to election season and the 58th legislature of the state of Oklahoma.
Ooh,
so
no, 57th.
Was this?
We just finished 56th.
Yeah, you're right, 57th. So this is kind of the second, iteration of the podcast. So we thought we would, one, kind of outline, what we have planned for you guys for the next several months, what, we're kind of walk through, talk a little bit about upcoming elections, a little bit about the news. We've been off really for the last 2-3 weeks, talk a little bit about what's come out. There have been some developments that are worth keeping track of. Mm-hmm. And then I think that will be mostly it, and we will pick up next week with a recap of the labor commissioner debate, along with kind of our regular news recap and what's gone on. Mm-hmm. Does that sound reasonable?
Yes, sir. That sounds terrific
to you.
What's after that?
After a labor commissioner debate?
Yes.
We will also be, so kind of in terms of topics that we're going to tackle, we've got the labor commissioner debate next week. The week after that, our main topic is going to be partisanship, like what partisanship is and nuances of voting behavior. We're going to, the week of June 18th, our goal is to have a panel with us and talk about the marijuana legislation that'll be on the ballot June 26th and what potential passage of medical marijuana for the state of Oklahoma looks like. June 25th, the last episode of this month, will be really dedicated almost entirely to the election results. That'll be the week that we have primary elections. The elections are on June 26th. So our episode on the week of June 25th will be what happened, what are the results, particularly interesting races, the medical marijuana state question, what that means or doesn't mean for upcoming sessions of the legislature. And that really gets us through June. Looking ahead throughout July, August, and September, we're going to talk a little bit more about what, the legislature did in this past session with a particular focus on criminal justice reform. Criminal justice reform has been something that, really dozens of members of the legislature have put a lot of time and effort into for the last 2 sessions. And it saw, significant progress this year. I think that there are many folks on both sides of the aisle who would say that we still have a way to go. But I think that almost universally, people would acknowledge we made some significant progress. So we're going to have at least one episode that really delves into that. And then moving forward, we're going to take a lot of time, and hopefully you guys find this interesting. If you don't, please let us know on Twitter so we can adjust our plans. But we're going to spend a lot of time delving into how does the government in Oklahoma work, right? We're going to start with the governor and kind of work our way down. What do statewide elected officers do? Like, what does the governor do? What does the lieutenant governor do? What does the secretary of agriculture do? What does the attorney general do? How about the state superintendent for education? How about the labor commissioner? How about county commissioners? We're going to kind of just start at the top and just work our way through the statewide elected officials and talk about what their constitutional responsibilities are, what the practical day-to-day responsibilities are, how they interact with voters, how they interact with the legislature. Do they report to, I think, an interesting question is, does an elected position like the labor commissioner, for instance, does the labor commissioner report to the governor, or does the labor commissioner report really to the people of Oklahoma? Mm-hmm. Because it's an independently elected statewide office. So who's kind of the labor commissioner's boss? And there are several offices like that. As we delve into that, we're going to try and keep it at, hopefully a high level, an interesting level. But one of the things that's interesting about Oklahoma government is that a lot of the functions and kind of day-to-day operations are delegated to boards and committees that are made up of folks that are appointed by different elected officials. Sometimes the governor, sometimes the Speaker of the House, sometimes the pro tem of the Senate, sometimes a combination of people. And so when we talk about these different areas of government, we'll talk not only about who the kind of elected officials are that are in charge, but who are the unelected and appointed officials that are maybe kind of running things on the ground. So that will be a big part of what we're looking at really up through the end of September. That's going to kind of take us kind of in the prime, the middle of election season. In September, we'll be looking really ahead to the 2018 midterms that are taking place nationally, as well as the elections that will be happening here locally in November.
That's right. And start looking at interim studies and what happens in the 57th legislature come next February.
Oh my God, when you say it like that, it sounds like it's tomorrow. And that makes me...
No, it's not tomorrow. We've got some time.
That makes me I have a little bit of a stroke when you say that. So
a little bit of a stroke.
Yeah.
It's like being a little bit pregnant, isn't it? You can have a mini stroke, I suppose.
Yeah, you can. I think pregnancy is pregnancy, but I mean, there are strokes of varying degrees and sizes. So a small one. Not a big one, just a small one.
You're the physician. I'll defer to you. All right. So are we going to talk about what's gone on since we last met?
Yeah, and we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, just because, I mean, if we really wanted to go kind of in the weeds and in the details, would be a 3-hour podcast, and we try hard not to do that, although sometimes it's tempting. But there have been some issues that have been making a lot of news. Mm-hmm. I think
so. She vetoed a bunch of stuff.
She did. So Governor Fallin, and I'll tell you, I think shocked would be a little bit too strong, but I was definitely surprised at this. So I think you guys, if you've been listening to the pod at all, you remember we spent a lot of time on Senate Bill 1212, which is the so-called constitutional carry bill. So this is a bill that basically said anyone can buy a gun and carry it anywhere that is, permitted without a license or training. That's the constitutional carry bill that was carried by Representative Cootie. There were kind of some shenanigans to get it passed. It got passed. Governor Fallin waited until a Friday, and at about 4:30, it was announced that she had vetoed constitutional carry, much to the consternation of several members of the legislature who had supported the bill, and outcry from the NRA. So that was, again, Governor Fallin has vetoed some gun bills in the past, so this wasn't unprecedented in that sense. But I think that, if I was a betting man, I probably would have said odds were about 90-10 that she would sign it, and she went with the 10 and decided that this was not the best law for Oklahoma.
Right. So a theory that I've heard is that she vetoed this kind of this was always the plan, that maybe she was always going to veto it, especially because the business community did not like this. The law enforcement community did not like this.
Oh, they hated it.
But this allows those legislators like Representative Cootie to vote for it. So the deal is they voted for a tax increase, which is bad if you're a Republican. So now they've got to compensate, compensate by voting for a Second Amendment expansion, right, or related bill, and that kind of helps even out things in the eyes of hardcore conservative primary voters. And
she can veto it and she can be the bad guy because she's not running for anything.
Because she's a lame duck, right? Yeah. And so that's the tinfoil conspiracy theory I've heard.
I don't think that's very conspiratorial at all. I mean, I think that makes complete sense. Now, I also, full disclosure, if you listen to the pod, this is not going to be a surprise. I also thought it was a terrible bill. But, when you look at kind of ex-governors and what they tend to do when they leave office, a lot of the people that might, and I have no inside information, this is speculative, but a lot of the people that might be paying Governor Fallin's salary when she leaves office are people that would have opposed this bill, right? Like CEOs of major companies that are headquartered here that are interested in attracting, young, well-educated talent to the state of Oklahoma. And that becomes harder when you have gun laws that are, or any laws, but especially gun laws that are viewed, at least by certain segments of the population, as being kind of outside the mainstream. So I think that you can make a case that not only does Governor Fallin have nothing to lose politically by vetoing the bill, she potentially kind of protects her reputation for people that might have a spot for her on a corporate board or something when she's out of office.
Right. So I think this was a little surprising to lots of folks. Then once you paused and thought more about it, you're like, not that surprising.
Yeah.
Here we are. Yeah. All right, so maybe the next thing is let's talk about the health department debacle. So there was...
Oh, Jesus.
Yes. Jesus, take the wheel.
Or someone.
Someone.
Right? At least someone.
Right.
Take the wheel.
Deity, take the wheel. Deity of your choice, take the wheel. If you... All right, so, a couple of weeks ago, there was a somewhat sudden press conference held by Attorney General Mike Hunter and State Auditor and Inspector General Gary Jones, both of whom are running for office. Everyone wants in front of a camera during election year, right? Like, let's get up there. Hey, I got something to say. I was involved in this. Free coverage. Hello, I'm the auditor. I'm the Attorney General. That's not really an impression of either one of them. And this was legitimate. It was just funny they both showed up. So the press conference was to release the grand jury decisions and ruling following the grand jury investigation into the health department debacle, where they misspent money. And the bottom line, I haven't finished reading the full grand jury report. It's like 80 pages. But the bottom line is their accounting system is terrible. And it's so complicated and antiquated that no one there, including even the commissioner, the top dogs, it's likely that no one knew exactly how much money they had, where it was being stored or saved. And it's been complicated like this for 30 years.
Yeah. So for those that have maybe not listened to our episode that kind of focuses on the health department, that I don't remember the number, but we recorded it like in early December, late November, somewhere in there. It's the health department came up, and at the end of 2017, the health department was in shambles. They approached the legislature. Well, they didn't approach the legislature. They basically said, hey, we need $30 million in the next 2 weeks, and if we don't get it, we can't make payroll, right? So the legislature made an emergency appropriation, gave them the $30 million. There were still like 200 people that were laid off. There's been a big investigation. The investigation initially had said that the health department was essentially playing shell games with money, that they were inadequately funded to carry out their mission at the state level. And so they were using federally granted funds to pay for services that were outside of the scope of the grant for which they were awarded. All right. So they were taking money that the feds had given them for one purpose, and then they were using it for another purpose here at the state level and kind of shuffling that money around to maintain all of their services. The money ran out. They were 30 million short. And that's when this whole kind of catastrophe happened at like the end of October of 2017. Mm-hmm. So the grand jury comes out a couple weeks ago and says, so after looking at this, we have determined several things. One, there was never actually a financial crisis. They actually had all the money that they needed. Two, there was a slush fund, and that's the grand jury's words, not mine. There was a slush fund that had all this money in it that was used to pay for these expenses, but no one was really aware of how much money was in the slush fund or where it came from. And three, and this was the thing that was most kind of mind-boggling to me, is that no one in leadership of the health department committed a crime. Like, right. They determined that there was an incredible level of financial mismanagement and malfeasance.
And incompetence. That was the AG's actual word, was incompetence.
None of which is prohibited by law.
It's not illegal to be stupid.
Right. And I say that because, like, again, and I'm not here, I don't know any of the people that were in leadership at the health department. I'm not sitting here, like, as we record this thinking, man, I don't like that guy. He should be in jail. But it is a little bit like, what? Like, how are there, what? Like, you've misused the public funds to the tune that there was a $30 million shortfall that wasn't even real, and like, it's just because people were dumb?
Well, so, and I mean, probably dumb and stupid that we've used is not quite the right term.
I mean, yes, that's true.
It's like, I don't have a good analogy, but the system is so complicated. Well, first of all, there are two accounting systems that they use.
Which is a problem by itself.
Right. So that's a huge problem. And they use them differently, right? So let's say you're measuring temperature in Fahrenheit and Celsius. You're measuring the same thing, but in different ways, kind of. Yeah. And then if you really understand one system or there are certain staff that use one system, a certain staff that uses another system, well, they don't talk to each other because they use different systems. And so according to each of them, things might be okay, and they don't have the full picture. And that's the problem, is that there was no one there. There was no one there that understood finances the way they needed to. And hasn't been someone there that understood finances in a functional way for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
So this was probably set up, I mean, as they said, like 30 years ago, and it was bad from the get-go, and it just got worse over time. But no one was there to really fix it. And it's hard to attract a chief financial officer for the salaries they're paying when you've got other private industries that are offering significantly more money for the same job and can afford accounting systems that are more up to date, and so the job is easier, right?
Right. And so what you just said, I think, Andy, is really important. And this is a pet peeve. This is a pet peeve of mine, and I think it should be a pet peeve of everyone's, right? I think one of the debates that we hear about government, and this is a soapbox that I've been on before on the podcast, but that's fine because it's worth busting it out again. We hear debates in government all the time about government should work more like business. Government should be more efficient. There should be less waste. We heard the mantra over and over again this session. We don't need to raise taxes. There just needs to be less waste, fraud, and abuse. Fine. But if you want people who aren't going to waste money, who know how to not commit fraud, who aren't going to abuse their power, and who understand the nuances of accounting for an agency with a budget in the hundreds of millions of dollars, you can't pay them a fraction of the salary that they would get in the private sector, right? Like, I mean, and I have no idea what the CFO of the health department makes, right? Like, I don't know, but I'm just saying
it's not nothing, but it's not commensurate with the amount of responsibility they'd have.
But let's just say if you're a company in Oklahoma, and let's say that you have gross, not net, you have gross operating revenue of $500 million, okay? And let's say that the CFO of a company with a gross operating revenue of $500 million makes, I don't know, $200,000 a year plus bonuses. Do you feel like that's a reasonable number?
It's way less than that. Say it again.
If you got a company with gross operating revenue of $500 million,
yeah,
the CFO makes $200,000 a year.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, that's fair. Yeah.
Right. So
in approximate round numbers, sure.
Right. Like, and I'm just throwing that out there as well. Then to me, a salary that is competitive with that is what the health department of the state of Oklahoma should be offering for the CFO position. Right. But we don't do it because there's this argument that, it's a government job, so it should pay less, or it needs to pay less because, we're trying to save money and be efficient. But if the market has said that the salary for a CFO of a company or an agency with a budget of $500 million is $200,000, why shouldn't the government match at least the market rate?
Right. Well, and that's an ongoing debate, right?
Right. But it's frustrating to me that we hear, waste, fraud, abuse, incompetence. Well, what do you expect when you pay a fraction of what these people can make in the private sector?
You get what you pay for.
It's frustrating to me because people are talking about the incompetence of the health department, and they're not wrong. But like you said, you get what you pay for. If we want to attract the best talent to run these agencies, then we need to be offering salaries and benefits that are competitive with good private sector jobs. Right? I mean, I get that government service is a sacrifice in many ways. But to take a salary that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times less than what you would make in the private sector, that's a pretty big sacrifice.
Yeah. There's a lot of folks that just won't do it.
Right.
And including, they've lost some staff there. We've seen staff at DHS leave this past couple of weeks saying, this job is too hard. This is the hardest job I ever had. It's too much money. I'm not going to stick around. So
anyway, we'll post on the blog tomorrow. There's been some great articles by our intrepid local journalists about the health department situation. Meg Weingartner, right? Meg.
Yep.
Weingartner. I always mispronounce her last name.
I'm not Weingartner.
Anyway, Meg from News OK has a great article looking at the health department that everybody should check out.
Yeah.
So
it's difficult. And for my friends that still work at the health department, they are definitely facing some increased scrutiny. And you said this earlier, maybe the most painful piece of this is that around 200 health department employees lost their jobs. They were let go because they thought there wasn't enough money. As it turns out, there was enough money. So they lost their jobs unnecessarily.
And they're suing, by the way.
Oh.
Yeah. That's the plan. There's the plan for all 200. They're going to sue the health department and say, we shouldn't have, you fired us because there wasn't money to pay us, but there was.
You forgot where it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it seems a little suspicious that there wasn't some kind of malfeasance there, but whatever. And the fact that they had the money hidden in an account that was labeled to be a restricted federal funding account seems suspicious, but it really just might be that they put it that way and no one was paying enough attention. People just weren't. You're just letting it go. Oh, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. And it's not fine. So,
yeah. All
right. Let's move on from the health department. A couple of things I want to highlight real quick. These are not on our list, so I'm jumping ahead. One is that the legislature has requested documents, emails, other documents from the Ethics Commission. Some of the leadership, Pro Tem Mike Schultz and Senator Anthony Sykes, are trying to get information, emails, contracts, other records from the Ethics Commission and regarding funding. The whole deal is the Ethics Commission has voted to sue the legislature because they did not get properly funded this year. And so the legislature's looking into the Ethics Commission. And this is one of those situations that we've brought up before that so far we don't have any information. It's not nothing, but the optics are just bad. The legislature, who has exempted themselves from open records, is looking into the Ethics Commission to find out, like, well, why are you looking into us? It's like a spy versus spy kind of thing. Like, our stuff isn't public record, but yours is, and so we want copies of it. But theirs is about looking into the legislature to find ethics violations. And so the Ethics Commission is expected to ask the state Supreme Court to find legislators in violation of the state constitution.
Not to mention that the legislature in their last 2 weeks of session, voted not to accept the rules handed down by that same ethics commission with regard to what legislators can do when they're done. And what's just like, and again, I'm not going to name names because I'm not here to like cast aspersions, but the ethics commission had recommended that there be a cooling off period between the time someone leaves public office and when they can register and work as a lobbyist. And there were several legislators who are retiring this year that were like, well, no, I'm not going to accept that rule. I'm not going to vote in favor of that rule because I'm already planning to be back here as a lobbyist next session. Right. Like, I already have my gig as a lobbyist lined up. Right. So no to you, Ethics Commission, and your recommendations and your rules. Like, and a lot like lobbyists get a bad rap. And if you've listened to the podcast at all, hopefully you know that we don't look at lobbyists as a group as like, they're not evil people. They actually serve a valuable purpose. But I don't think the idea that you shouldn't go straight from legislating to lobbying, like, I don't think that idea is just ridiculous at its face. And it's just like, kind of like you said, the optics are just like, are you kidding? And now you're going to like get into a lawsuit with the same ethics commission whose rules you just said you weren't going to accept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the other thing is that the ethics commission, which has a staff of 7 people who are charged with looking into this. So their budget request was for like $1.2 million to establish an open government department. Hey, open government. What a novel idea. Maybe we need more of that. So they asked for $1.2 million to do that. And the legislature instead gave them no money from the general appropriations and basically told them they had to use this like $700,000 from a fund that is made up of fees collected from lobbyists, candidates, political parties, and PACs. And so it's like, okay, you don't get any general money. You get these fees from these people over here that we don't really like. That's half of what you need. And this is one of the things that the face value is the legislature does not, it appears that the legislature does not want to fund the Ethics Commission because the Ethics Commission is charged with looking into the legislature, right?
Yes, sir.
It's like, it'd be like if you and I, not that we do anything wrong, so this is a bad example, but people not wanting to fund the FBI to look into other things. Like, well, we don't want to fund them, they look into us.
Yeah.
I get it, but also, like, don't be dumb, guys. Like, there's probably some nuances I'm not aware of, but just at face value, it doesn't look good. The other thing is a update on, so we've got state question 788 that will be on the ballot in June. That's the medical marijuana question. That's a yes-no thing. That's a big deal for our state. We're going to talk about that a lot more in the next month. But also, not to forget, there is state question 793, or a campaign for state question 793. This is not yet on the ballot, but they just submitted their signatures, so it looks like it's continuing to head down the road towards the ballot, or towards a ballot. Is that state question 793 would amend the Constitution, because right now the Constitution prevents optometrists, so like eye doctors, from opening practices in, quote, commercial settings, and they can't sell glasses unless that's most of what they do. So this prevents places like Walmart and Target from having optical marts inside their stores. Now, growing up in Texas, for a long time, my optometrist was in Walmart. It was super convenient. I had no problems with it. That was my experience. And so this group Again, this is one of those things that's weird that's in our Constitution in the first place. Like, why did we forbid retailers from selling glasses and doing eye care? And so this would amend that to allow that. And so they turned in, they needed 124,000 signatures. They got 250,000 signatures, overwhelmingly supported. The proponents would say this is going to improve access to eye care, which is a legitimate need in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And I assume, I haven't really read it, but I guess opponents are saying that they don't want Walmart selling glasses. Do you know anything about this?
You know, I don't know much about it. I mean, I would say yes in terms of in favor of it. Yeah, it'll improve access to eye care, provided that all those optometrists are going to be located in Target, Walmart, other big box retailers. Yeah, if they'll accept Medicaid, it'll improve access to eye care. If they don't accept Medicaid, I don't know that it will really do that much in terms of improving access. Like,
but I could see in like a rural area where there is a small Walmart that for an optometrist to have an office, he's got to find a place, pay rent, all that stuff.
Sure.
If it's somehow affiliated with Walmart, they might offset some of that cost.
Sure. Yeah, and that makes sense. I just like in my experience, the biggest barrier to people getting kind of like the eye care that they need is
money.
Trying to find a provider. So if they'll find a provider, if the providers will accept whatever form of insurance they have, whether it's private or public, then great. If they don't, then outside of kind of that rural setting like you're mentioning, I don't know how much difference it will make in terms of access. I don't honestly have strong feelings on it one way or the other. I don't know enough about it, but that's just kind of my face value.
Yeah. I mean, you wear glasses, I wear glasses. We both have eye doctors that we go to. I've been going to the same guy since 1999.
Yep.
He is my oldest friend now.
Right.
We don't hang out, but he was like, "Man, you've been coming for a long time." I was like, "I know. I see you once a year-ish."
1999. You're a young one. I got glasses in the 3rd grade.
I did too. But I moved here in 99, so I've been seeing him.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to leave him to go to an eye doctor at Walmart. Unless he goes.
Right.
And then I would.
I'm kind of one of the weird guy. Like, people have asked me because I wear glasses every day. I have contacts that I wear at times, but I usually wear my glasses every day. People have asked me, like, have you ever thought about like LASIK or whatever?
Every day.
Yeah.
Every day I think about it.
What's funny? I have no desire.
Really?
Yeah. Because it's weird. I don't know why. And it's not like
I would consider giving up a kidney for LASIK.
I don't think like I'm not like, it's not that I think I look, when I look in the mirror, it's not that I think I look better or worse in glasses or contacts. Mm-hmm. It's just that I think I got glasses when I got glasses when I was young enough. Mm-hmm. And I didn't start wearing contacts until I think 8th or 9th grade. Maybe I think it was 9th grade, maybe the summer in between. Like, wearing glasses is like a part of my like identity. You know what I mean? It's weird. Like, it's bizarre. Like, I get because my vision is bad. Like, Ashley will tell you, my wife will tell you, like, if I am flailing around in the morning when my alarm goes off and I like reach over to I would say smack the alarm, but I use my phone like everybody else. I don't have a clock radio, but I like reach over to find my phone and turn my alarm off, and I like knock my glasses onto the floor. Mm-hmm. Ashley has to like help me find my glasses because I can't see without them. Yeah. So it's a hugely like my vision is terrible without glasses or contacts. But despite that, I like refuse to even think about like LASIK or other corrective surgery because to like never wear glasses again. I kind of feel naked when I walk around without glasses on.
That's weird. Interesting. So same thing. I got glasses in 3rd grade. I have they're fine. I think I look nice. I look smarter in them, but I just can't wear them. I got contacts in 9th grade. Changed my life. I could play football better. I could play soccer better. Glasses are just in the way. So now I'm the opposite of you. I only wear glasses like from the bedroom or from the bathroom to the bed at night. Like it's 20 feet.
That's so interesting.
Every now and then I'm like, I want to wear my glasses to work today. And I get to my car and I'm like, no, I'll go back inside and change. Like everything the world feels weird.
Cause to me, the rate limiting factor of glasses versus contacts is if I'm going to be outside all day and I want to wear sunglasses.
Yeah.
Then I wear contacts. But that's literally Like that's the only like if we're going on a road trip and I'm going to be driving all day and I want sunglasses, I'll wear my contacts. But that's like the only time.
It's so much better.
I wear glasses exclusively.
I feel like glasses are so limiting to my, and I'm not like a super athletic guy, but I just feel like they're just in the way all the time.
That's funny.
Anyway,
to each
their own.
That's the optometry state question.
That's the eyeglasses section of the podcast for today. So I think we are about done.
A couple things. You mentioned the marijuana state question. We're going to talk about it a lot, but one thing to kind of keep on your radar. I know Andy and I are keeping it on our radar, mostly out of like panic and sleepless nights and bad dreams. There is the very real possibility that if medical marijuana passes, the Oklahoma State Legislature will return for a third special session.
Indeed.
As we've kind of discussed in a couple episodes ago, if the state question passes, Oklahoma will have the most permissive medical marijuana law in the state. It is widely accepted that the legislature would return to kind of put in place a more stringent regulatory framework for medical marijuana. I think many people in the healthcare professions would agree that that would be necessary. I'm not trying to speak for all doctors. I'm just saying that's kind of what I hear. If that were to happen, Senator Nathan Dahm, who is a Republican from, I'm blanking on, where's Senator Dahm from?
I don't know.
He's Senator Dahm. We'll look up where he's from, but Senator Dahm is proposing that if they have to come back for a third special session to do marijuana regulation, that they should revisit some of these other issues that Governor Fallin, like on bills that Governor Fallin has vetoed. Not just this session, but any issue that she has vetoed during her tenure in office. Now, for those playing the home game, you know that special sessions are limited to dealing with issues that are within their call, right? So when a special session is called by the governor or by the legislature itself, they have to say, we're convening a special session to do this, right? So if they were to have a special session to deal with medical marijuana regulation, that would not include dealing with issues like constitutional carry. But Senator Dahm is suggesting that if they're going to be in special session, a third special session anyway, to deal with medical marijuana, they should self-convene into a separate but concurrent fourth special session to revisit her vetoes on constitutional carry and a host of other issues.
Would this be... Oh, that would be the fourth.
That would be the fourth, yeah.
So the third would be medical marijuana, fourth would be everything else.
Yeah, so they would come into special session, presumably at the call of the governor or the legislature itself, to deal with medical marijuana. But while in third special session, they would hold a separate vote, convening themselves into a separate fourth special session to revisit issues where they've passed bills and the governor has vetoed. Senator Dahm is currently collecting signatures to see who all would be in support of this. The last time I looked, he had 28, which is... not zero, but not enough. So we'll keep an eye on how many special sessions the legislature might be up to for the rest of the year. The last thing we were going to kind of update on, the Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite, which is the group led by former U.S. Senator Tom Coburn, is still in the process of collecting signatures to try and put a veto referendum on the November ballot that would overturn the taxes that were raised in this most recent session of the legislature to pay for increased classroom funding for education, as well as to pay for teacher pay raises. The kind of update there is that the Oklahoma Education Association and the Oklahoma Public Educators of Oklahoma, right?
Yes.
Public Educators of Oklahoma have both filed legal challenges to Senator Coburn's standing, basically saying, actually that's not true. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm getting confused. They've not filed challenges based on standing. They've basically said that the legislature passed these issues because there's like a clear and present danger to the welfare of the state of Oklahoma, and our Constitution says that if the legislature passes bills that are kind of necessary for the security and safety of the public, I think is the exact words.
Yes.
That if a bill is necessary for the security and safety of the public, it's not subject to the veto referendum on the ballot.
Right.
The Supreme Court in Oklahoma has fast-tracked those challenges, and I think arguments are set to be heard not next week, but the week after.
I think that's correct, yes.
So we will keep you updated on kind of the latest of whether or not Senator Coburn's challenges, one, how they're doing in terms of, signatures and getting on the ballot, and two, what arguments are made before the Supreme Court and what the Supreme Court rules in terms of whether those challenges are allowed to proceed.
Right. Exciting times to be alive in Oklahoma politics.
Yes. Lastly, on a lighter note, this week's edition of Pruitt Watch.
Ooh.
Everyone knows my favorite segment, Pruitt Watch. Check out the article by Trace Savage, William W. Savage III, right? Mm-hmm. On non-doc, Oklahoma's non-doc.
Hence the trace.
Yes, the trace. By Mr. Savage on non-doc this week, discussing the EPA's denial of access to a public event for an AP reporter, and what that says about Administrator Pruitt's just kind of ethos towards the press in general. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's worth your time.
Also, check out the NPR Embedded podcast series. There is an episode about Scott Pruitt that is fascinating. It goes back to when Pruitt was, to the very beginning, like his very first client as an attorney, goes back to before he was Attorney General in Oklahoma. Features Oklahoman Joe Wirtz from the State Impact Oklahoma. Some really great insight. They go and visit with this woman. Fascinating story about Scott Pruitt's rise to power. So many weird and bizarre stops along the way.
Yeah, true story.
All right. So
I think that wraps us up for this week, right?
I think so. That brings us to the end of this episode. Remember, next week on June 6th is our Labor Commissioner debate at the Tower Theater. Details about that are online at facebook.com/letsfixthisok. Also, you can just go straight to letsfixthisok.org/events for all of our events coming up. We'll have some more we're going to be adding soon.
Yeah. And I would say to all of you that are listening, we are incredibly grateful to everyone that has listened to the podcast and who has given us, really great and valuable feedback on things that we do well, things that we can improve. I would just encourage you guys. I really hope you kind of stay with us here in the legislative off season. I hope we're a good resource for you to know kind of what's happening at 23rd and Lincoln, what it means, how it impacts you, and what you can do to kind of influence what's happening at the legislature. But I also hope that you know that there's a lot that happens even when they're not in session.
It's true.
There's a lot going on, and there's a really good case to make that in terms of advocacy, these next 6 to 8 months when they are knock on wood not in session is some of the most valuable time that you can spend in engaging with your legislators and engaging in advocacy, particularly when most of them are running for re-election or when some people are running for the first time. So I hope that you guys really, stay tuned over the next several months, and I hope you join us here every week. I think we've got some really great guests in mind.
That's right. More than just Scott and I.
Yeah, like we've
good
got
people.
some really awesome people that are going to be on with us that are going to kind of talk about what different offices and state government, kind of what their responsibilities are. People that have held a certain office, what they did, people that are running for office, what they're going to do. I can't speak for both of us, Andy, because I haven't asked you this specific question, but I mean, I think I'm more excited for kind of the next 4 to 6 months of the pod than I was kind of looking forward to kind of the regular session and just kind of covering what's happening at the legislature.
Well, hell yeah. I mean, a lot of it's we just need a break from the day-to-day drab of the Capitol.
Yeah.
But this is the reason that Let's Fix This was founded, right? This stuff, this is the thing where we are educating and equipping regular folks, youth listeners, about how to get involved. This is the off season, and just like in any sport, the off season is where people get stronger. This is where teams are built. It's where people are traded also, but this is how it happens, so that when when the season starts come next February and they go back into session, boom, like you're ready, you're equipped, you're informed, you're educated, you're voting, you know who your newly elected state representative and senator are, and you were at their door at their swearing in service, which we will have an event for this fall, to meet them and to be like, hi, hello, I live in your district. I voted for you, or I voted against you. I voted for your opponent, but I want to know you and I want you to know me. And to just start that on day one, man, I'll tell you what, I'm excited.
Y'all, this is Pastor Andy bringing the word twice in one episode.
This is the kind of stuff that fires me up.
Dude, I'm with you. I'm like, when you mentioned at the top of the episode, we spent several hours kind of like talking through this and making plans and lining up guests, and I was like so like jazzed and like psyched up at the end of that. I'm excited. So I say that. I hope you guys don't think of the next several months as like, oh, okay, well, we're gonna let the left politics guys do a thing, and I'll check in January when the legislature's back. No. Like,
this is it.
You want
camp.
You want to stick around for the next several months because it's gonna be, I think, a lot of fun, hopefully really entertaining, and I know this is the nerd in me. Most importantly, I think really educational for all of us.
I guarantee people will get more information from this podcast and the associated blog posts than they've gotten the rest of the year, because we have a chance to really spend some time in developing this.
100%.
Scott and I are both committed to waste several Saturdays.
Yes.
Not waste, but spend several Saturdays like sitting here recording podcast, writing out scripts, and not just doing this shit by the seat of our pants.
Right.
I'll bleep that. All right.
Don't believe that. Leave it in. Leave it in.
All right. Well, I'm not Nate Silver. I can't just curse willy-nilly.
I think you can.
They have been bleeping him more lately.
Also, can I a quick plug since you mentioned Nate?
Yeah.
I think probably most folks who listen to us know that you and I are both big fans of the 538 weekly politics podcast. If you don't listen, you should. If you're a political junkie and you don't listen, you're not really a political junkie. Listen, please.
Well, that is my sole outlet for national politics. Everything else I do is state, local level, but I listen to them because they are data nerds.
Yeah.
And without so much of the slant.
Well, there's no bullshit. I mean, right? Like, there's no bullshit. But if you don't listen to them regularly, if you don't want to subscribe, fine. Go and listen to both episodes that were posted this week. So listen to the kind of the main episode that came out on Monday, and listen specifically to the episode that came out today, talking about polls and how to interpret polling data. Yes. And why pollsters, like what makes a good pollster, what makes a bad pollster. And I say that because as we get into election season, particularly as we're talking about kind of local congressional races specifically, but even more kind of local races than that, when there is polling data available, which will probably be fairly sparse, but when we talk about polling data, it's important to understand how to take that in context, how to interpret it, and how to know what it means. And if you want a great primer on that, listen to both episodes of the 538 Politics podcast from this week.
Yeah. As an example, there was a Sooner poll that came out last week, got lots of press, and it was a poll of likely voters, and something like 80% of their likely voters were senior citizens. And so it was one of the things where like they could be correct based on polling history, but they might have missed it by a large margin.
Yep.
And so, in fact, I was tweeting about it from my personal account, and Pat McFerrin, who is a bit of a pollster and a political guru in Oklahoma, said that he will eat his hat if senior citizens comprise less than 38% of those who vote in the primary election. You better believe I'm watching this closely. I will salt and pepper a hat for Pat if less than 38% are senior citizens.
Hey, millennials, challenge accepted.
Show up and vote.
Challenge accepted. That's all I'm saying.
You know what happens if you don't vote? You get Brexit. You wake up one day and your country has left the European Union.
Yep.
That's the kind of thing that happens when younger people don't vote. Yep. Millennials comprise the largest voting bloc in history,
but one of the most unreliable voting blocks to show up and vote.
If everyone showed up on the 26th, we could shift Oklahoma politics in a huge way. And then for sure, I mean, that'll be a big thing, but you really got to show up in November. Both are important in different ways. You've got to get the best candidates out there. And then in November, you come back and elect them into that office. Okay.
Everybody's saying, remember in November, but what do we say?
See you soon in June.
That's right.
All right. So that brings us to the end of this episode. Remember, you can connect with us on Twitter and Instagram at Let's Fix This OK. Scott is at SC Melson. Andy, am at Andy OKC. You can also like our Facebook page at facebook.com/Let's Fix This OK. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and rate it. Give us all 5 stars right there and tell us why you like it. And put some comments in there. Also, you can contact us now. We have a new email address that is podcast@letsfixthisok.org. If you have a suggestion, if you have feedback, anything, send it that way. If you're interested in sponsoring the podcast, please shoot us an email at podcast@letsfixthisok.org. We'd love to talk to you and find out what you're working with. Sign up for our newsletter on our website, read our blog, which we will soon start posting on again because I'm almost out of grad school. We have more free time. Scott's going to have something tomorrow for that. That's pretty exciting. As a reminder, our podcast is edited and produced by Scott and me, and Let's Pod This is a member of the Mostly Harmless Media Network based right here in Oklahoma. Our theme music is generously provided by the Sugar Free All-Stars. Let's Fix This is a nonpartisan, non-profit organization who strives to educate and equip all of you Oklahomans to engage with your government in meaningful ways. We encourage you to get involved in any way that you can. And remember, decisions are made by those who show up. Thanks a lot.